Today in episode 43 of the podcast, we will be discussing Blade being delayed indefinitely and is Christopher Nolan's next film a period horror. We'll also be reviewing Venom: The Last Dance and breaking down Season 1 of Terminator Zero. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we get started with the news this week, we want to thank everyone once again for entering our merch giveaway. We will be announcing the winner of that by the end of the episode, so please stick around. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube page and anywhere you follow us on social media. We have sites on literally everything from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter. We're all over the place. Letterboxd. Check us out. We appreciate it if you give us a like, a follow, a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the podcast.
And you can check out all our written reviews over on IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, Letterboxd. Even on Letterboxd, you can see our list for our favorite films, our guilty pleasures, and everything. So make sure you go over and check us out over there and give us a follow.
Absolutely. Now, kicking off the news this week, we got some news from Disney. They're reportedly getting ready to announce this brand new AI initiative. We've talked ad nauseum on this podcast about our concerns with AI. It feels like the announcement is coming and is going to concern post-production and visual effects. So it seems like that's going to really affect a lot of people in that company that work in those aspects of, film and animation and things. And it's really something that's going to be kind of game-changing for that industry, that you're seeing one of these major companies, the first one to really announce some kind of formal initiative to kind of integrate this software.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy after the strike and everything else that happened that companies waited a little bit and now they're going full force into AI. And, post-production, visual effects and stuff, I can see we don't want it replacing the creatives. It needs to be a tool for the creatives to use, but not replace their jobs. And hopefully that's something they're doing. It also mentioned that they're going to use it in the park. So I believe it was with D23 or something earlier this year. They had Rocket Raccoon on a video screen that you could interact with, so you could ask them questions and everything else. So that seems like something you're utilizing AI for. Of course, they're not going to get Bradley Cooper to do all those voice lines and stuff. So I can see something like that being interesting, but it also potentially takes away from a voice actor, recording those lines. And maybe, I don't know if it was created by AI, the visual aspect of it, or if they actually had someone design it and then they just plugged in the AI for mainly the movements and the voice. But it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize it, but we just hope it's not costing anybody their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it feels like with, integrating this into their system like this, it's going to cost some cuts somewhere. And, the industry's already, struggling with, so many people trying to work in the business, just trying to find work, in so many different aspects of production and, different things like that a lot of people are really, struggling to get work right now. And it's really unfortunate to see. And I know there's several people in the conversations that I've had with them and the people that they know that are, wondering if they'll ever get a chance to really work in the industry that they, want to work in and love in. And that's just really unfortunate. And I'm still holding on to like a little bit of a shred of hope that even though they're integrating this into these things, that there's still going to be some element of human control that can help with that. And, these people can continue to still, thrive and work and get back to work and, working on these projects that they're so passionate about, because it's a big fear that everybody has in AI. And that's not just a film and industry thing. Like, we're talking about it here, but I know there's, pushes in several other industries to integrate this type of software to help make a lot of things more streamlined, if you will, and, drive down human costs. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to push so much of your workforce out of it, like what are these people going to do? You have to find ways to, people got to earn a living, and it's something that's very concerning for everybody. And obviously with us being a film podcast, we're talking about how it affects, that industry in particular. But yeah, it's kind of it's a whole societal conversation that people are having, and it's it's just something we got to still figure out how we're going to use and how it affects literally everyone, because we're seeing it obviously the most in film right now, but it's going to work its way into a lot of other industries, and it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, as a graphic designer, as a creative myself, Adobe has integrated a ton of, AI as an illustrator. It's in Photoshop. It's probably in some of their other software. Those are the main two that I utilize when I'm not working in Figma and stuff. But it's in there, and they doing presentations where they show you how well, I really liked how they did this flyer. Well, but I needed to say this, and they used AI to copy the look and have it produce this flyer with all their information, taking the look of the other thing, which is still kind of okay. Yeah, that's quick and easy, but you basically just stole the design and putting graphic designer out of work for stuff. It's like it's still a very slippery subject that it can affect a ton. We got fast food restaurants. Some of them are trying out AI for taking orders.
Yeah.
And so it's being integrated in just about everywhere that they can probably use, but there's a lot of dangers that comes along with it. And it just, I don't know. I'm still not sure how, like, there's some things that make it easier and that I like about having AI around and using it. But when it comes to just trying to make things quick and cheap and easy, that's where things become a problem.
Yeah, it's definitely something we got to watch out for. And, at some point, I feel there's got to be some kind of pushback from people on this, and we'll see where that leaves everybody. It's a really concerning time for everybody with this. Like I said, we've always advocated that it's fine to use as a tool, but it's not meant to replace, the human element. I've seen several people attempt, even just AI art, and have a lot of trouble with the AI replicating exactly what they want based on the command inputs and things like that. Like, hey, make a photo of this, and it just comes out and it's a jumbled mess. So it's still
a lot of
like
extra fingers.
Yeah, and it's still a ways away from like being a a perfected thing. But like quickly as it's like evolving and getting better, and they're making improvements to it, it's only a matter of time before it's just a snap of your fingers and you can get basically whatever you want. And I get it from a streamlining perspective, but it's horrible to see that it's costing and potentially costing thousands and millions potentially of jobs. And it's like, well, what do people do now? If you've trained your whole life to do a certain task and it's being completely replaced, could you imagine having to start your life over like 35, 40, 50 years old that like, you spent a good chunk of your life, perfecting a craft, and it's just being replaced. And now you're like, well, what do I do? What's my purpose? It's a deeper philosophical question that I think a lot of people need to have, but it's definitely concerning for sure. And, we're always going to advocate for, the human element of things, and we want people to work and, do things they're passionate about. But this is, like I said, it's very troubling and concerning.
Yeah, it just depends on how deep they go. These corporations are going to look at what's going to save them the most money. So it's not going to really matter about what happens when customer service and just all the designers and all the visual effects, and even, people are starting to play with film. They're starting to put together trailers and scenes and stuff using it. Yeah. What happens when they get AI to a point where they could do full films in AI? Do they need directors anymore? Do they need cinematographers? Do they need actors? Like, they could basically replace everybody with an AI that, it costs them because you have the servers to run them and everything else, but it's going to be much cheaper than everything else. But it's also, like you said, you can't replicate the emotions and the passion and everything else that a creative or an actor or someone else, and even music can be affected with how many AI bands, if people are already starting, there's apps out there you can it's basically taking auto-tune to the next level, that you can give a little sample of your voice and then it'll create full songs for you.
Yeah, and it's crazy to see. Like, it's one that I feel like we could spend a lot of time really diving into, but it's something that people, need to keep at the forefront. And, we'll see how this works with the Disney announcement and their actual plans to integrate it. Hopefully we get more information than, the sugar-coated rollout that we're going to get from this. Like, oh, this is great. It's going to be great for X, Y, and Z. And then they'll talk about the other side of it, obviously. But I think it'll be really interesting to see what this initiative is going to completely entail and how they plan to integrate it. And at the end of the day, how's that going to affect people? Because at the end of the day, that's what's most important.
So moving on to our next story, a few episodes back, we talked about Chick-fil-A was going to start their own streaming service, but now we have more concrete information on what that's going to be. So it's actually an entertainment app They're going to drop it on November 18th. It's called Chick-fil-A Play. And it's going to have video content, games, jokes, podcasts, ebooks. They said it's designed for kids and families to utilize while they're eating. So you're probably going to see a big integration into the restaurants while you're sitting in there, maybe probably QR codes where you can download the app or something interactive that you can do with the app inside the stores to allow families to play. You might have AR events or something else, but it's not a full-fledged streaming service. They will have original content that they produce for that video content, but now it's a free entertainment app.
So I guess the immediate joke that you have to make is, does it only work 6 days a week and not on Sundays? That's the joke to make, right? So we don't know, but yeah, this is one of the. I remember this story just like throwing me for a loop. I'm like I think I made a joke like you could have given me 1,000 guesses as to who was coming up with the streaming service, and I never would have landed on Chick-fil-A, which is crazy. But I kind of imagine it in a way like if you ever notice like when you go to the gas pumps now, like while you're pumping gas, there's like a little TV screen and they've got videos and stuff that plays. And I'm wondering if it's going to be an integration like that, or did they announce that it was even going to be like available on people's phones? And
yeah, it's an entertainment app that you're going to download on your devices, on your phones, your tablets and everything to be able to play and use.
Okay, that's fair. I was going to say, because it feels like if you have to be there to use it kind of thing, but that's still interesting that, I wonder what all they're going to put on there and like what type of, like you say podcast, but I'm like, what kind of can we get on there? I wouldn't, like, could we be your entertainment podcast? Chick-fil-A wouldn't mind it, but like it's going to be interesting to see the rollout. I'm going to download it when it comes out, and I want to check it out just to see what all's available on it. Because, like, how many times do you go see, like, family meals at restaurants where people are eating together as families, and you got half the kids sitting there with a tablet out and watching videos while they're out to eat? Hey, might as well give them a Chick-fil-A app to download and watch videos on while they're there. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's interesting to see, and I want to see if it's successful. How other places try to integrate this. Like. It's interesting to see Chick-fil-A being the first one to kind of take this step and make it a thing. And,
yeah, McDonald's has had a couple things like on Happy Meals where you scan a code and you can kind of do a little interactive thing, but it hasn't been as in depth as having a full app that's just dedicated to content. You just want it to be family friendly stuff, so. I would say probably 10 and under. They're probably gearing towards the little kids that parents may need a little help with wrangling their kids in and that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what type of content and if the shows are worthwhile watching for families and kids. Because, some people when they think of kids programming, if you don't have kids programming, it's just going to be terrible. And there are some that are just really hard and cringy to watch if you're an adult, but kids absolutely love, but there are many like Bluey and a few others that are fantastic for an entire family to watch. So I am interested to see what approach they have to the original content that they're producing for this app.
Yeah, and we'll see what kind of shows and stuff they come up with, because I'd love to see the production value into what they're putting into this, especially if it's on a free app. You wonder like if it's going to be really bad like visual stuff, and I wonder if it's going to be more animated stuff. That would be fun. That would be something interesting to check out, but definitely going to look at that when it comes out here in a couple weeks for sure.
So you think Blade gets moved to Chick-fil-A Play?
That would be awesome. Can we get a home for Blade? We'll have more on that coming up in a minute, but if we're going to jump into the Marvel talk, I would love to jump over to something I'm very excited about, which is Daredevil Born Again. So Daredevil Born Again is finally coming to Disney in the beginning of 2025, but we got a little bit more information out of it here in the last week or so. It is going to be TVMA, which is very exciting because, Disney has been more willing here, especially with the success of Deadpool and Wolverine, to go more on the edgier, violent, bloody language, incorporate all of that into their movies, and saw how successful it was. Daredevil Born Again is going to be TVMA, and it is coming out on March 4th. I am so excited for this show. Like, I've waxed poetic on here multiple times about how Daredevil is one of my favorite shows of all time, and I'm so excited that it's coming back and getting a reboot. The trailers that we've seen for this have been awesome. I'm so excited for this show.
That's the main thing I was going to talk about. Like, they've shown a trailer twice now at two different events, conventions and stuff, but they have yet to release it out to the public to see. So I'm curious exactly why that. I mean, the trailers look great. I mean, they are a bit more adult. You see some, hard-hitting, bloody action and everything. It does look like it is a more of a next season of the Netflix Daredevil show than a brand new thing, which is great because, as when they first started out, they were going like completely ignoring the Netflix shows basically. And then, after a few episodes, you're like, this isn't working, and let's go back and we'll make it like the Netflix shows. And it sounds from everybody involved that was the right decision to go with this. But yeah, I'm so excited to see that in March, and March can't get here quick enough because I'm ready to dive into Daredevil again, because the Netflix show was so incredible. The Punisher and like most of those are incredible. We don't know if we're going to see, will we get a little cameo from Luke Cage or Jessica Jones or somebody else? Are they potentially going to bring them back into the fold, or is this going to stay? Because, we do have John Bernthal returned as a Punisher. So that's even more confirmation that universe is going to be part of the MCU now. So it's not out of the question that we have Iron Fist and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones could potentially cameo or have maybe a little nod here or there in the show, which would be fun for those who, really enjoyed all the Netflix shows, but we haven't heard anything. Daredevil's the only one that's really got brought back. There's been talks that Punisher could get another one, but right now it's just Daredevil. So it would be fun to get a few other little cameos, even if it's maybe a poster or a name or something else in there.
We've had Kristen Ritter kind of openly lobbying to come back as Jessica Jones, which I'm all for. She was fantastic on that show as well. There's been some rumblings, like, I don't like to dive too heavily into spoilery things before stuff comes out because you just don't know until you see it. But, there's been some rumors that she may make a cameo appearance in Daredevil Born Again and may play a bigger role in season 2 because we know it's getting 2 seasons. So very excited for, that potential, integration of the other Netflix properties that were wildly popular and successful. I know, Michael Coulter's kind of said that he'd be willing to come back in the right situation. Haven't heard anything about, the guy that played Danny Rand or anything that played Iron Fist, but it's really exciting to see, the potential for these guys to all come back together under the Disney umbrella and something that's going to be a lot of fun. And I know, like I said, I'm so excited for the show, and we will be, doing a weekly recap of every episode when that show does come out. So I'm very excited to kind of dive back into that world and talk about it here on the show.
Yeah, there have been a few rumors that they're looking to like recast Iron Fist because Shang-Chi 2 is apparently going to feature him in it. So It could be a woman, it could be another guy. Like, we've heard various rumors on that. So it's going to be interesting. It seems like maybe, he's done being Danny and that we have someone new who steps into the role. But, maybe they'll bring someone else from the show.
Colleen would have been.
Yeah, Colleen.
The actress that played Colleen was fantastic. And there was kind of like the way that left off with season 2 was she was, potentially having the powers of the Iron Fist already. I think she'd be a great addition. Who knows how people would take that? I know, when you start playing around with characters, people tend to, have very, very strong public opinions when it comes to those things. But we'll be interested to see what they do cast-wise for that, for sure.
Yeah, so moving on over to Christopher Nolan. So 2026 is already jam-packed before all of this came out, but his next movie is set to film in 2025, will release in July of 2026, 1 week before a small independent film known as Spider-Man 4.
Yeah, no big deal, right? Spider-Man, like, we're so excited for that film as well. But yeah, it's exciting to see Christopher Nolan kind of get back into it. There's been some back and forth on which film, like, he supposedly got 2 creative ideas in the works on which one it's going to be. There's talk of it being a horror film that he could potentially be doing, or completely different film about 2 helicopter cops, which is pretty interesting to see what he can do with that. But Nolan's known for these, big, cinematic visual, type films. Obviously, with the success of Oppenheimer last year was, amazing for him. And, to kind of see what he does next, it's going to have my interest no matter what it is. I think I've seen every single one of his films at this point. Most of them, with the exception of a couple, are absolutely fantastic. And I'm excited to see what he does.
Oh, yeah, he's one of the most creative and interesting directors to watch because he has such a love for the storytelling aspect of it, but wraps it around with some incredible cinematography and some just scenes and things you really haven't seen before. But I really hope the rumors of it being a horror movie is true. He has talked about that he wants to do one, but he just hasn't got the right story yet. But I would love to see his take, because, I mean, we've seen slightly stuff with that. I know Scarecrow with the Batman films and a little bit from some of his other films, but to see a full-on horror film would be good for him. But what makes it even more interesting is Tom Holland has signed on along with Matt Damon to star in that film. So a week apart, Tom Holland in a Christopher Nolan film, and then Tom Holland back as Spider-Man. Like I can't see those two films staying a week apart, especially with Tom leading both of them. Like one of them is going to have to move, and Spider-Man just announced. So I would think Christopher Nolan would have to be the one to move, but he's one he gets a lot of say in when his films come out and what they do and everything else. So we'll see if he budges, if he's scared of the comic book movie or not to kind of hurt his film or not. But I mean, we could have another Barbenheimer type of situation here that we do Spider-Man and whatever his, film is. Like we have another Barbenheimer between these two, because Spider-Man 4 is going to do fantastic, and more than likely a Christopher Nolan film is going to do fantastic too. But it's just interesting to have two movies with the same lead actor coming out a week apart.
Yeah, it feels like now, especially in the last, couple years, we're getting a little more back to the summer blockbuster type season, and looking ahead into next year and even 2026, like you mentioned, are just jam-packed with these big time movies that are going to be coming out. And I'm excited for, those future releases for sure. But Tom Holland is going to be exhausted if he has two movies coming out at the same time like that. Well,
next year, 2025, is Avengers Doomsday, which he's going to have some sort of role in, Spider-Man 4, and the Christopher Nolan film. So he's got 3 mega blockbusters that he's doing next year.
Yeah, he's going to be a very, very busy man, which good for him, man. Like he's kind of taken a little bit of a step back since the last Spider-Man movie to kind of take a little bit of a break, but it seems like he's diving right back into it full force, and I'm excited to see what he does, because he's a pretty solid box office draw, I would say, considering those movies, especially the Spider-Man ones, are all like $1 billion movies. So you can kind of take Tom Holland to the bank when he shows up in something.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Like he's going to be in 3 huge films in 2026. Yeah, he's going to be exhausted filming all those next year. So we don't know how big of a role he may have in Doomsday, but the rumor is like he's signed on for potentially another 6 films altogether, which, Secret Wars, Doomsday, and Spider-Man 4 would be 3 of them. So it's going to be interesting to see maybe Young Avengers or, something else he shows up in. But, we still know that Sony and Marvel are butting heads about Spider-Man 4 because, we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to our Venom: The Last Dance review, that Sony kind of has something that they're trying to move forward with, but Marvel wants to finally bring Spider-Man to that street level. Maybe we finally get him with Daredevil and Kingpin, and we see all that. But it's going to be interesting to see who kind of wins out on Spider-Man 4.
Yeah, but it seems like they've come to some kind of agreement, though, because judging by how Tom Holland has talked about it, like it seems like they have a direction that he's very excited about. Mm-hmm. So curious to see how much sway, and that's probably part of his deal, that he's a little bit more involved with those types of things. I know the running joke is you can't give Tom Holland any type of, spoilery type stuff, but if he's aware with what he's doing and the direction they're going in, he's already kind of openly talking about how excited he is for it. That gives me a lot of hope that whatever they're working on is going to be really good, and hopefully the studios can kind of work together, or maybe just let Sony get out of the way and let Marvel do their thing with it. But who knows? But at the end of the day, like, it's exciting to see Tom Holland back for several more films and runs as Peter Parker, because he's just been fantastic at it.
Did you see Tom talking about how he deliberately didn't do any press and stayed away from media until Comic-Con was over with, because he knew that Robert Downey Jr. was coming back as Dr. Doom, and he's like, I didn't trust myself. Like, I had to stay away because I was going to spoil it if I said anything.
He's like, I can't talk to anyone about it, which is hilarious. But it's fun that he has that self-awareness too, and that's kind of part of his, his charm and his appeal is, you just relate to him, because I feel like that's how a lot of us who would be put in that situation would be like, oh, I want to tell everybody like what's going on. But that's a lot of fun for sure. I know we're going to pivot back over to Marvel, and we've talked a lot about Blade and the troubles that the movie has had. We've gotten confirmation this week that Blade has officially been taken off the Marvel calendar. It was so crazy that up until this week, like, they had this film still slated to come out next year, and it hasn't even started filming. Like, what are we doing? Like, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for some kind of positive update. They've had issues with the script, the director. Mahershala Ali has stayed true in his desire to play this character, and it feels like he's going to get that, but it feels like Marvel's got something else in the works that I'm equally, if not more, excited about than just a standalone Blade film.
Yeah, the rumors are they're fast tracking the Midnight Suns film to get done before Blade here. So I mean, that's going to more likely feature Blade,
Sure.
and a new Ghost Rider potentially. We're gonna have a lot of the darker, magical, supernatural characters in there. So it's going to be interesting if we do get his introduction in a team up, because for the most part with Marvel, most of the characters have gotten their introduction before a team-up film.
Sure.
So if they go that direction with Blade to give them, because I mean, we had the voiceover at the end of Eternals, but we haven't physically seen him as the character. So if that is the first time, it's going to be really interesting that that's the direction they've decided to go, and then get back to Blade, because he did speak on it that he's talked to Marvel. He feels good and happy about the direction that the film's going now, and he's okay with the delay. So he's still on board after 5 years of trying to get this film made. I just hope they get it made, and for all of them, especially for him, that it's done right and it's a fun film, because it needs to be rated R. It needs to be dark. It needs to be just something different and interesting, because Wesley Snipes' Blades were so well done, and of course we got the line in Deadpool and Wolverine that there's only been one Blade and there'll only ever be one Blade, although he kind of forgets that they did the series. But
we don't talk about the series either, right? But it's fun. But yeah, for those of you who don't know too much about the backstory of Midnight Suns, you've touched on it a little bit, but they have several of these characters kind of already around in the Marvel Cinematic Universe already. The Moon Knight series, hopefully that's a call for Oscar Isaacs to come back and play Moon Knight again. I think that was a very underrated Marvel show that doesn't really get a ton of love. Just kind of, it was released in a weird time that, a lot of people were kind of not as invested in some of the stories Marvel was trying to tell, but I thought Moon Knight was really, really good, and I really enjoyed it. But you got the Doctor Stranges. Does Benedict Cumberbatch come back for that? You've got Blade, like you mentioned. You've got Moon Knight. So it's the fun, darker, mystical type stuff that I think you could tell a really fun story with. I know everybody's been trying to dreamcast, Norman Reedus to come back as come into the fold as Ghost Rider, or, God forbid we get Nicolas Cage back. That would be
There's
crazy.
been rumors of Ryan Gosling being Ghost Rider as well.
So, it feels like if they're going to invest in that story, they may really hit some heavy hitters on this movie. But that's an exciting one to keep, at the forefront, that they're, going to move forward with this movie. And if you can get all those guys on board, I think you've got some potential for some serious magic in that story.
That could be a really fun, dark film to do that's going to be quite a bit different than a lot of the stuff they've done. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, and we'll see if the rumors come true that they are trying to get Midnight Suns done before Blade, and where Blade ends up. With it being pulled off the calendar, it's officially delayed indefinitely, so we don't know now. Could they aim for 2026, 2027? They did, I think it was 3 films in 2028. Unannounced films. Does Blade get delayed that long, and it's another 4 years, 9 years of waiting to get Blade? I mean, if they get Midnight Suns done, that's enough of a help, and maybe he shows up in Doomsday or in Endgame. We've already had Endgame,
of course,
in Secret Wars or something else, that maybe he gets a few cameos before he gets his full movie, but that's definitely against the grain of what they've done before.
Yeah, I mean, you have some cases of, seeing these characters show up in more of a team-up role. You can make the argument that the Hulk was the first movie in the timeline, but you really didn't get this iteration of the Hulk until the Avengers. You didn't get, you had Black Widow making several appearances before she finally got her own film. Scarlet Witch showed up in Avengers Age of Ultron before she really got her own TV show and a little bit more featured. So it's not completely out of the realm, but more of the higher profile characters, to your point, do get their own kind of standalone before they're integrated into everything else. But at this point, if that's how you're going to introduce Blade, let's do it. Let's go. Let's get it on the calendar. Get this movie made finally. I know we're chomping at the bit for this movie, but it does feel like 2027, 2028 is kind of going to be that sweet spot to where we may finally get this film done, depending on, how the Midnight Suns film goes and everything. But Marvel's filling up their movie docket pretty heavily now. And, there's a lot of things that they still got to come back around on and, get done. But it's going to be interesting to see where they all fall in line and how they all shake out. I think we're going to get a little bit more information once the Fantastic Four is done. And, that really kicks off the next phase of things. You still got to think about the X-Men that's going to be integrated. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces that they got to find ways to fit. And unfortunately, that does mean that, people are kind of falling out that we've been kind of waiting on, that they're like, okay, well, the direction that we think we're going, like, these may not necessarily fit in the overall story that we're trying to tell.
Yeah, it's one we've been waiting for about as long as Blade now, is Shang-Chi 2. Like, we thought he was going to be showing up in so much more stuff, and it's only been in that one film, and he hasn't really been seen since then. But there was, like, apparently some deleted scenes for the last Doctor Strange, where there's potentially going to have them finding the rings and other stuff that was going to integrate him a little bit. But we do have confirmation that Shang-Chi 2 is happening. It's going to take place. He may be showing up in maybe one of the Avengers films. So we do have a lot of characters that have been kind of shoved to the back, and they haven't been able to get the next iterations going. But hopefully they get Shang-Chi, they get Blade, they get all those figured out, and they can go forward. Even like Eternals, they already announced that's kind of indefinitely on hold as well. Like, we got one film and they haven't shown up in anything, even though Captain America, the next Captain America film, does somewhat mention them in it, because they are going around one of the giant celestials and stuff. So we'll see exactly what their game plan is going forward.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we've just wanted them to have kind of a more focused storytelling, vehicle in the way that they were so successful with their initial run all the way up to, Avengers Endgame, and get back to that, cohesive, everything's interconnected, and it kind of rewards you for paying attention to these stories. And I hope, with the kickoff of, Deadpool and Wolverine and, the Fantastic Four and everything they're doing now, that you'll get back to that and they'll start to, come back together, and we'll see which ones get left behind and which ones make it in.
And while the removal for Blade was bad for it, we do have some good news for Predator fans. So its November 2025 release date has now been taken over by Predator Badlands. So this is the follow-up to Prey. I mean, it's not in the same time period, so it jumps to a different time period. But it's directed by Dan Trachtenberg. But there's also a secret Predator film that's going to be coming out next year as well. So we're going to get 2 Predator films next year, both directed by Dan.
Yeah, and the running rumor is it's going to be another Alien versus Predator film. That's one of the ones that everybody's kind of crossing their fingers and hoping. But you got to figure, with a movie of that magnitude, that we would have heard about it by now, especially if it's coming next year. But they're being very tight-lipped, which is kind of fun and exciting. But hopefully that pays off in a big way. But yeah, 2 Predator films in 1 year is definitely an interesting choice. I know Prey was fantastic. I loved Prey, like, very underrated and kind of underheralded, because it came out in that whole COVID. Everybody's kind of like, it just feels like a big blur in that time period anyway. That like, a lot of stuff was being watched, and you don't know how people were taking to it and appreciating it necessarily, but I really enjoyed Prey.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. And it's interesting to see that the other rumor past, Alien Predator could be coming back. It could be the secret film, is that it might be an animated anthology film. So there's rumors that it could be up to 3 different stories where Predator's going up against samurai and pirates, and just going to different time periods, which could be really interesting, because I mean, I would love to see that in live action, Predator versus a samurai or something. But if it is an animated series or an animated film with those stories in it, it could be really interesting, because that's what kind of everybody talked about after Prey came out, because they jumped back to a different time period with, without technology other than the Predator's technology, that let's see him jump around in different time points. And might be getting that, because Badlands does take place, I think it's in a more futuristic setting, away from Prey's old classic setting. And then if we get the animated anthology where we get samurais and pirates, and who knows, maybe he goes to ancient Egypt, or some other timeline like that, it's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, an animated piece would be a lot easier, in my opinion, to keep under wraps, because they do a good job of hiding the work that's done on those before you see any type of trailer or hear about anything like that. Those are easier projects to kind of, I don't want to say sweep under the rug, but just kind of keep more tight-lipped on because it's more controlled. It's not in a big open space where you see people filming, and the potential for leaks are significantly stronger when it comes to live action versus animation, which sounds like a ton of fun. I know that they could tell some really fun stories in that world, so we'll kind of keep an eye out and see what winds up coming out of that for sure.
Yeah, we'll see if maybe even the Alien versus Predator part is one of the animated tales, and we get a new one of that in a different time period or a different setting with that. So it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I know we're talking about Predator and Alien, but we do have some news about Alien Romulus. It appears to be getting a sequel, which, you can go back in our archives and check out our review on Alien Romulus. We absolutely love that movie and are really looking forward to now potentially a sequel. And you've got rumors now that Fede Alvarez is in talks to return to direct the follow-up to it as well, which I couldn't be more thrilled with. I love Fede Alvarez as a director and did a really amazing job with Alien Romulus, so it's exciting to see that he could potentially be involved with the follow-up too.
Yeah, and we have Kaylee and David both are potentially back. If you watch Alien Romulus, know where their characters ended up at the end. And David is fantastic of being our android and everything else. Like, he handled that so well. So it's going to be really interesting to see, because I really enjoyed Alien Romulus, but in our review did mention that it is kind of a greatest hits of kind of the best parts of everybody liked about Alien and Aliens and everything else. So with a sequel, I really want to see Fede make it his own and just go full in that this is his version of Alien now, and just go deeper in that. That's the only complaint I really had about the film, is that even though it touched on some great parts that made Alien and Aliens and the rest of them great, I want to see what he can do, because, the atmosphere, the cinematography, everything was so fantastic in it. I just want to see him go full bore into his own original story when it comes to Alien.
Yeah, especially I would love to see him dive deeper into the horror element of things, because he did a really good job of capturing that vibe in that film, and hopefully they kind of take it up to the nth degree in the next one. But that's exciting too, because you've got a couple more films that are coming out with potentially more sequels. I know the running gag is everything's getting a sequel, everything's getting a universe, everything's getting a trilogy. We've got another update about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is another film that you can go back in our archives and check out our review on that. We kind of felt like it was kicking off something more moving forward for it. It has also been announced to have a sequel that's coming in 2027.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I really enjoyed what they did. I still haven't gotten around to picking it up so I can see the motion capture version.
Sure.
So I really want to check that out so I can see how the actors and everything look trying to film, because I'm a big nerd about that stuff, seeing that behind the scenes and seeing the motion capture. Really the only problem I had with that film was the ending, just because it was, you're talking about a movie with apes taking over the planet, but there was some really unrealistic stuff that happened in the final moment. Like, it made for a good looking scene, but it made no sense at the end. So, but I am really looking forward to see what he can do with the second one, if they still get the same director returning, because he's also doing the live action Legend of Zelda film. So it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of balances doing those two, if he is returning for the second Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, that live action Zelda film is going to be, it's got potential to be absolutely fantastic, but we know how crazy that fan base is of those games and how popular those games are. Amazing games. We'll see if he has success with that, if he does come back to the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes sequel as well. It's definitely going to be a fun one to check out.
I'm just waiting to see, like, every time Link goes to talk to someone, just cut him off. And then someone just starts talking over top of him.
That would be pretty funny that we never actually get to hear the man speak.
Yeah, because the only time we've heard him speak was in the animated series back in the 90s, which everybody loved.
Yeah, nobody had an issue with that at all.
I always get the, excuse me, princess, like, stuck in my head, because I was like, okay, they really did that.
Yeah, go back and check out some clips of that show, and, like, yeah, the 90s were a weird time in animation. A lot of good, a lot of really, 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 really bad. So.
And they also had that weird Philips CDI Legend of Zelda game that they did. Like, all right, we'll do the show. We'll let someone else do it on another console. Nope, those are bad ideas.
Yeah, thankfully they righted that ship really quick. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see, that get another sequel as well, as long as well as the Legend of Zelda movie for sure, because that's going to be interesting to check out.
And we do have The Wild Robot 2 is moving forward, so we have a sequel to that. So there's a lot of films that we've seen this year. I think we've already seen some things maybe moving forward on other Transformers 1 follow-up. So there's a lot of things that have done pretty well this year and in the last couple of years that is going to be getting sequels going forward.
Yeah, everything's getting a universe and a sequel, so buckle up.
Speaking about universes and sequels, we have what is supposed to be the final Venom film and Venom: The Last Dance. And this is one that I'm really torn on how I liked it or enjoyed it, because it is a bit of a mess. All of them have been kind of a mess. Like sure. It's going for more of the anti-hero, the comedic, over-the-top elements. But I mean, this just kind of took the over-the-top elements, and it was just like one ridiculous set piece after another after another. Like, it's not like I didn't have fun with the film, but a lot of it was laughing at the ridiculousness sure. of it because it's over the top. I mean, it loosely picks up after where we left and Let There Be Carnage, where he's kind of on the run, that they're looking for him. But we also get a tiny little bit of the multiverse in there, but not as much as everyone thought we were going to get. So that's a little bit of a spoiler there that I didn't give a spoiler alert on, but it just that's kind of how the movie was. It just threw whatever it could at the screen and see if it stuck.
Yeah, so the central premise of this film is, there is the creator of the symbiotes is trying to break out of this prison that the symbiotes have kind of, kept him in. His name is Null. He's the main antagonist, if you want to call it one. He's sending they're called xenopages, which are these creatures that are sole purpose is to hunt down and find what is known as a codex that is being carried by Venom to release him from this prison so he could just destroy everything. That is Null's sole purpose here, is to just encapsulate the universe in darkness and, really sinister, really evil things. And, that's kind of the premise for this film. They're coming to Earth to get this codex to release Null from his prison, and that's kind of the crux of the kickoff of the whole film. And it kind of kicks off with like a whole bunch of crazy shenanigans. There's humor, there's fun, there's jokes, there's, some action mixed in as well. There's a lot more like kind of gruesome, violent action in this a little bit, considering, what the main the xenophage that they have to deal with in this film. Like, it's pretty, pretty rough stuff.
Get somebody. It's like the visual was like,
it was kind of jarring. Like, I wasn't expecting that part. We both looked at each other like, oh my God, what the heck was that? But yeah, without diving into spoilers, but yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag for me too. Like, it's got a lot of charm and a lot of elements to it that are fun. If you're going into these movies expecting some kind of serious story, you're going to be let down. But like you said, it's one of those, I call them, like you said, that just turn your brain off film and just go and have a good time. You can go have a good time. People were laughing in the movie, like in the experience that we had in the theater with it. It's not the best film you're ever going to see, but it's not the worst either. Like, it's still a good time. It's a good fun time at the movies. I think it's like 2 hours. Like a 2-hour film. But yeah, you get this, what's called The Last Dance, and you get what appears to be a very definitive end for at least Eddie Brock in this universe, without going into too much spoilery stuff. But you get some conclusion to potentially his journey with the symbiote. But they do kind of leave the door open for some future stuff.
Yeah, for being the third and final film of a trilogy, it's very loosely connected with everything else that happened in Venom 1 and Venom 2. Like, there's very tiny connection to it. You got a few characters, you got him being on the run because of everything that happened with Carnage, but it just kind of throws all that out to be about Null and everything else. And yeah, I think the biggest problem is tonally. Like, it is ridiculous and over the top, and all the other two has, but it tries to bring in a few more maybe emotional or darker moments and stuff, and then it goes right back to slapstick, and that just tonal shifts just didn't work for me that well. Like, I had fun with it if again, I turned my brain all the way off and just watched it for the insanity. But it really was like a lot of the movie is Tom Hardy talking to himself because, he's a voice of Venom and he's Eddie as well. So he's just kind of basically talking to himself. But it's also, if you are looking, because I mean, it's MCU adjacent. Like there was potentially set up for maybe we were going to see Spider-Man, Tom Holland show up and, connecting Venom, which we kind of connected Venom into the MCU. But this one was kind of just like throwing all that out the way. It made a joke at its expense, but it kind of just threw all that out the window, and which makes it even more confusing when you had multiple actors from the MCU in this film as well. So it's just like you get maybe the multiverse, it can be other people, but it's just like just adds more confusion because you had at least three kind of prominent characters from different versions, from Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and then you have Doctor Strange. You have characters from all these films, but they're not playing those characters. They're playing brand new people, even one playing a Thanos level villain, and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see that they very loosely use the multiversal stuff. They do make a funny joke about it in the beginning, the very literal opening scene of the film. But yeah, it definitely feels like they're taking place in a universe where maybe the Avengers aren't necessarily a thing, maybe, or just like really that tied to everything going on, even the Spider-Man connection. But it feels like it wants to be kind of in the orbit of it without being in the mix of any of it, which is probably the best way I can describe it. But it's a fun adventure that they take you on, as nonsensical as it is. There's a lot of humoristic elements. Like humor is kind of at the forefront of this entire movie, but they try in some ways to throw some, like you said, some charm into it, some, a little bit of despair maybe about, the potential of, these, Eddie and the symbiote not being in cahoots and together anymore, and the kind of the seriousness of it, and the very real existential threat that they try to throw into it of, this codex cannot, the only way to stop the codex is if one of them passes. Sorry, I have to leave a little bit of a spoiler in there, is what the importance of this codex is. And that's kind of the crux of, the emotional element of the film, is how do they reconcile the fact that what they really need to do is destroy this codex in order to stop Null from, escaping from his prison. And that's kind of the back and forth that they have. Like, you kind of go back and forth, the guessing is like, how are they going to resolve this without this, very real, because they throw a lot of stuff at Venom in this movie to, really play up like how desperate Null is to break out of this prison.
And the codex is another thing that was just kind of confusing about the film because, Null is on a different planet. He's being held captive, but he can create portals to throw the xenophages through, but he can't like portal himself, I guess. And then the codex is only created when a symbiote has to bond with its host because he's saving its life or something. But then again, like, so how did they, before they even left the planet, put a lock on this that required them leaving the planet to find a host? Like, if you go into logic, that's where you can really tear the movie apart. Like, it can be a really bad film if you go in to trying to look at everything logically, because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Like the whole codec thing, just because of the xenophages can track them from whatever distance if the codec is active, but once it's gone, it's like, wait, I'm looking at you, I can still see a figure, but nope, I guess you're not who I'm looking for anymore. Like there's a lot of corniness like that just stuff that just didn't work. But again, if you can turn your brain off to the logic of it, especially being the finale of a trilogy, which is kind of hard to turn your brain off to because you're looking for a conclusion to a story. So you're trying to see how they wrap everything up. And I couldn't stop thinking about how many more Ted Lasso characters are we going to have show up. So and many, right? I wanted to see Roy Kent get his symbiote suit or something like that.
Speaking of not following up from Marvel that we talked about earlier, he appeared as Hercules and, the Thor Love and Thunder film. But so, I mean, you got more integration of Ted Lasso into the MCU here. I think Juno Temple was fine in her role as the Doctor. She was very, like, all about the science and very, like, into it, but she had her own, like, confusing tangential connection to these things. Like, her backstory was kind of a cluttered mess and like her like stuff, but I think she did fine with what they gave her. I
She
love
was in
Judith
the
Temple.
first one, but not the second one, right? So she did the first and third Venom movies.
Yeah, I think she did. I think she did a good job here. And like you said, there's other MCU characters that or MCU actors that are playing other characters and other versions of other characters in this film. And that part of your brain's kind of hard to turn off when you only see them in one light. And it's like, okay, he's playing this, but I know him from and that's where you kind of got to disassociate yourself a little bit. I'm trying really hard to find really positive spins about this movie. Like if you like just funny jokes and humor, like there's plenty of that in the spades. Like I found myself like laughing with quite a bit of it, but if you're looking for like a logical, serious comic book story, you're not going to find it in this film. You're really not, which is kind of a shame, but you kind of know that going into this. Like they haven't been the most cohesive of stories to begin with. I really enjoyed Venom 1. Like I thought Venom 1 was really fun. A really good story. Venom 2 I thought was a hot mess, like on a good day. And I think Venom 3 kind of falls somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's as bad as Venom 2 was, but it's definitely nowhere near in the ballpark of Venom 1 for sure.
It is definitely the most over top one that they've done so far. Like they just went full into slapstick, crazy over the top humor. There's a weird obsession about Eddie Brock and his feet with shoes and everything else. Like that was a big underlying story that went nowhere really. Like just made a bunch of different jokes about his feet and different shoes and losing shoes and like is that just supposed to be a feet joke about? Because, I mean, we know with Rob Liefeld that he didn't like drawing feet with Deadpool. He didn't really have much to do with Venom. That was Todd McFarlane, and I apologize for getting the other, co-creator's name, but I just didn't really get some of that stuff. So, yeah, it was a weird one because it is the finale of a trilogy, so you're looking for those answers, but it's one that they've talked about is going to be the last one, but at the same time, it's setting up a Thanos-level villain to potentially carry on forward. So is he going to be carrying on without Eddie? We're going to get some new symbiotes or something else that's going to happen. Like what exactly are we going to be doing with Noel? Because some of the rumors were that he would potentially, that's what Sony wants, is Spider-Man 4 to be about Noel and him coming to Earth and being that. But how do you have Noel going into Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four with Galactus and all that stuff? They're already trying to push Kang aside and get done with that. It's like if they're pushing to bring Noel into the MCU, it just adds even more confusion. And like I said, just when you look at logic with how Noel is being held and just how powerful he looks to be, like he really wouldn't be held the way that they had him held. And it just, if you can ignore logic, you'll have fun with it. But if you go in wanting to have a solid conclusion, like it gives you a conclusion, but it's one that just, it doesn't feel as satisfying because it does feel like it's setting up for other things.
Yeah, I think this goes into a bigger topic of, Sony's digging in their heels for whatever reason, wanting their own creative direction on things with these. Like they do, at the end of the day, they own the rights to Spider-Man, which is very, very frustrating. But I'm thankful for the working relationship they've had with Disney. I know a lot of people are kind of lobbying very publicly for like Marvel to just buy Sony films at this point and buy the rights to Spider-Man back.
They did great with Madam Web and Morbius.
Like, yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like Sony trying to like throw their own story in here with this, but yeah, you have this at the end of the movie. You have Noel like threatening to not stop until he gets what he wants and he's break free and just kind of unleashing hell on Earth or hell in the world. But it's going to be very difficult to see if they can follow up on that. Mm-hmm. And do they move forward with another Venom story that maybe moves away from Eddie Brock? Because like I said, there is a very feels like a definitive conclusion for Eddie Brock, not necessarily Venom, right? So without giving away how that comes to be, but it feels like they're potentially setting up to move on without him, even though Tom Hardy's very publicly said that, hey, anytime you want me back to play Venom, I'm down.
Well, he did talk like he would love to do a Logan-esque Venom that's hard R, that's dark, dramatic, and something like that, which is especially after this third one is completely different than the direction that they ended Venom in. So if they brought that back, that would almost seem weird. Like it fit with Logan because Wolverine was always played as a pretty serious role, even though he had some humor, but it was dark humor because he's telling people off and everything else. But moving into Logan, because we've also had those storylines in the comics, but to go from where The Last Dance is to do a more Logan-esque Venom film would be really strange to me.
Yeah, it would be hard to find that tone, especially given how these films have gone. But yeah, you're trying to set this guy up as this potential big bad and real existential threat that I just don't have any confidence in them really following up on. Is Marvel planning to use this character? We don't know, but like you said, with the slate of things that Marvel has coming up, it doesn't feel like there's a solid fit there anywhere. And it doesn't feel like, even with the lack of integration with Spider-Man, that there's going to be any solid way for that crossover to make any type of sense, which is kind of unfortunate. But that's the mess of Sony's creative direction versus Marvel's creative direction. Yeah, at the end of the day, they still own the rights to Spider-Man, and they can do whatever they want at the end of the day. But I don't feel like that's going to be the direction that Marvel is going to wind up winning this argument on.
Yeah, we also got 3 Venom films with no Spider-Man in it. So, I mean, he can kind of work when you go to the anti-hero version of him like they did here. But, yeah, we got 3 Venom films without Spider-Man. And we have Kraven coming up at the end of the year here, which looks like it's going even more over the top of the violence. Like, if you've seen the Red Band trailer for it, it goes extremely graphic. So, it does seem like Sony may not know exactly what they want to do with all these characters. I mean, because we know the mess that Madam Web was, and tonally how it struggled, and Morbius struggled a bit too, and these Venom films were way over the top, and then you go back to Kraven that's looking to try to be serious and very graphic. Like, it seems like the Sony verse is a little bit lost in exactly direction, because we know with the MCU they have a pretty solid direction, even though we know Phase 4 they kind of fell off a little bit with trying to maybe do too much, bringing in too many characters and all that.
But there's a track record there.
Yeah, there's a good track record of more hits than misses.
Right, and not necessarily as much in Sony's case, although in a way you can give them credit for how well Spider-Man's done. But at the end of the day, that, at least recently, it's been more Marvel's creative driving that than it has been Sony's, I would say. But yeah, at the end of the day, Venom: The Last Dance is a mixed bag of things. It depends on what your expectations are really for this film. If you're expecting the most cohesive, logical storytelling ending that you've seen in a trilogy, you're not going to get that from this movie. But if you can go in with a little bit more of an open mind to kind of just go for the ride and go along with it and just see the kind of story that they tell, there are elements of humor that do work in this film. They do humor very well in this, I think. The jokes are funny. The logic in the story is very much missing, in my opinion, and that's what it's kind of a yin and yang type film that it just more depends on your expectations. So if I were to rank this film on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably land it around a 4.5 to a 5. It leans more towards the negative just from the lack of logical storytelling, but the fun element really bumps it up from being a harsher grade than that. So I'd probably land on a solid 5. Like, it's not the worst film of the year, but it's nowhere near the best film.
Yeah, I'd probably put it around a 5 as well. Like, that's being generous, just because if you can turn your brain off and go watch it, you can have a pretty decent, action-packed, funny time with it. But if you really want to look at story and the overall Sonyverse and what they're doing with stuff, it's a mess. And there's just so much stuff that doesn't make sense. And you've got MCU actors in there that are playing different characters. And there's just a lot of confusion exactly on just where things mesh up. And it's just tonally all over the place. It just doesn't hit right, other than the action and the humor. So if that's what you want out of it, go see it for that, because that's what it does pretty decently well. But it is over the top, and it just kind of sets things up for future, but it's supposed to be an ending, but it's doing a future, and it's just, it's a bit of a mess. So a 4 to 5 is probably right where this film deserves to be.
Yeah, and that's a good place to end it on. So Venom: The Last Dance is out in theaters now. Please go see this movie, form your own opinion. If you think we totally missed the mark on this, come let us know in the comments. Let us know what you think. If you have seen it, if you agreed, let us know too. We love having that conversation with people. And now we want to pivot over to our TV review of the week, which is Netflix's Terminator Zero. This is more of an anime style take on a Terminator story. So This one, in my opinion, it's a very different take on, this type of story, but it's done in such a way that is really a breath of fresh air for me, because I really enjoyed this overall, very dark, dramatic, violent take with, some more modern day, emphasis on, things like AI and things that we know about and how that plays into the futuristic Terminator story. And I think it was done really well. You get, this story is set in 97 in Tokyo, and you have this character, Malcolm Lee, who's kind of the dad, the main character. And, he's got his family, but he's got his 3 kids with, that he's a single dad taking care of these. They lost their mother, but he's very much involved in the creation of the Terminator program, and he sees what it's become, and his sole purpose is to stop the, upcoming apocalypse and knowing what comes forward, because he has these visions of the future, and he sees, kind of what's coming, and he's doing his best to kind of stop it, and that's kind of the crux for how this whole thing kicks off.
Yeah, and his idea is coming up with an AI. So this deals, like we did have James Cameron talk about, if he did another live action, that it was potentially going to involve AI and mixing that into Skynet and everything else. But, Terminator Zero kind of kicked that off for us. Yeah. So he creates Kokoro, which is this AI that he sees as, this great defender of the human race, is going to defend everybody against Skynet and the Terminators. But it doesn't exactly go as he planned, because he made it kind of too well. So Kokoro has her own thoughts and feelings. Like, I've seen the database of everything that man has done, and man is just war and killing and everything else. And, she's little hesitant on doing what he wants to do, and he's really mixed, because he's trying to help his kids and he knows what's going to happen, but he's a workaholic, and all he really cares about, because he knows what's coming from all his visions. And you get a little deeper on exactly why he's seeing everything. It's been out for a little bit now, so it's probably okay if we talk about some spoilers on it. If you don't want to be spoiled on it, make sure you go check out Terminator Zero, then come on back and see our review on it. But we do find out that Malcolm is from the future, so we actually have, about 3 different timelines at play together, because we have where Malcolm came from, and then we have, was it Eiko? Or Eiko? She comes back to stop him from doing the AI, and we get a big, storyline around that. But I really enjoyed what they did with it. I was surprised by, I saw the very first episode. I'm like, all right, I got to keep watching. It's one that you want to binge. Once you watch one, you want to keep going to see, because it is over the top with the action. It's very bloody, violent, crazy over the top with what it does, but it's well voice acted. It looks beautiful to see. It has a great anime style to it. I really enjoyed watching the series. I was hooked from moment one and binge watched straight through the end.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. There's some fun twists in the show as well, especially how Eiko is, trying to stop Malcolm from doing this. You kind of get a little bit of an understanding on how they're connected without, spoiling too much of that ending. But yeah, it's such a fun show. If you're into, that type of story, the underlying tone is humanity really worth saving. It's a big central theme of this show, but it's done in a way that, they try to figure out their own place in the world and what that means, and how AI can, it's a very heavy, preachy about AI type of show, in my opinion, that kind of reveals, what happens if they're given the ability to kind of think for themselves. And that's always been kind of the thing about, Terminators and Skynet, right? Is, artificial intelligence and everything becoming sentient. And, what if that sentience comes with, turning things negatively, in a sense that, humanity is not worth saving. We got to destroy humanity to save humanity, kind of thing. And it's always been that underlying tone of all these Terminator films. And it does such a great job of keeping that tone throughout the show. And it's a really beautifully told story, because like I said, it's a lot of very serious things are going on in this show. This is not a humor show at all. This is
not a show for kids.
Definitely not a show for kids.
Depending on your kids.
Yeah. But definitely not geared towards most kids. This is a very TVMA show for a reason. And like you said, very gruesome and graphically violent, more than even more than what I was expecting, because they kind of take it up to like the nth degree in this, but in a way that's really well done. Though the story makes a ton of sense. It flows from episode to episode. You get each episode, you get a little bit of a deeper dive into everything in people's backstories, and they give you a reason to care about these characters surviving and making it, and hopefully stopping the Terminators at this point. But yeah, it's really well done. I had a lot of fun watching this. Like you said, the first episode kind of grabs you and pulls you in, and you can't help but get lost in this world for, I believe it's 8 episodes.
I believe so.
Yeah, 8 episodes, and it's a pretty quick watch too, but it's so well done, and I'm chomping at the bit for them to follow up on it, which does feel like it's going to happen. But yeah, it's so good. Like I was taken aback by how good it was and how much I actually enjoyed it, because I wound up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I did.
Yeah, same. Like I looked at it because we know the first 2 Terminator films are classics, fantastic. But everything that's followed, they've all been a mixed bag. Like, kind of like Venom: The Last Dance. You can have fun with them if you kind of turn your brain off and just watch them for the action and stuff. But they've been really mixed. But this kind of took us back to something that had really solid storytelling, gave us a lot of mystery. There's a babysitter that's taking care of his kids and stuff, and there's a lot of mystery around her, which also touches on with her storyline on different sides of the AI spectrum, because you've got Kokoro is this way, and then you have other AI is a different way, and exactly how all that's handled. But I think it did a great job of really keeping that mystery going without being too confusing about the timelines and what's going on, and kind of revealing everything in the end. And it didn't really pull any punches. Like, there's some characters that you didn't expect things to happen to them as they did, and like, okay. And yeah, the violence was graphic. I remember the police station scene was one that was very graphic to look at, and like, they didn't pull any punches with the show, and it's good because of that. Like, they went all in on one to tell a very gruesome, brutal, but kind of emotionally solid story that really took you on various journeys with these characters from the future and present day, and just a lot of different timelines coming together, but done in such a great way that, yeah, I'm so excited to see a season 2 of the show.
Yeah, I really appreciated the realness that in the way they, like, even in the violence, they do it in a way that makes sense. So you have these cold-blooded, calculated, emotionless, Terminators that just have one prime directive, and they only care about that directive, and they will do whatever it takes to, eliminate anything they appear to be a threat. And it's done in a way that's like, okay, yeah, like, for the entertainment purposes of it, it's a lot more amped up in a way that's like very brutal and gruesome, but it's done realistically. It's like, okay, I could see if these beings were, their whole directive is to eliminate the threat, which is humanity, like, they find creative ways to get that done. Like, it's done in a lot of ways that make a lot of realistic sense, turned up to 11 for the purposes of, animation and, storytelling, but it still felt very realistic. I'm like, oh man, like, I could see that happening. Like, it's crazy. And at the end of the day, it's a really well told emotional story, and kind of a journey that they take you on that, I'm not gonna lie, I watched it in one sitting. Like, I binged the entire thing straight through without stopping. That's how hooked I was on this show. And it's one that I have to say I would definitely recommend if you're into that sort of thing. If you're a little unsettled about strong violence, this may not be the show for you. But if you can take that and have it as a part of the story and the storytelling that they do in a way that makes sense and kind of ties everything together, they do a fantastic job of that.
And so the end, Terminator Zero was a fantastic anime take on Terminator that gave interesting twists with the AI, gave us some brutal violence, some great voice acting. Overall, the story just was really enthralling, got you hooked from the moment that you first watched it, and really got you wanting and craving a season 2. So I would give Terminator Zero probably a 9. I would rate it really highly. Like, this was a really well done, beautiful to look at, but just really entertaining watch.
Yeah, I would agree. I was going to give it a 9 out of 10 as well. It's violent, it's graphic, it's got great stories, it's got a good a good message, and it's all done in a way that's interconnected really nicely in a way that you want a story to be told. And it's one that has a high rewatchability for me. I definitely plan on going back and watching it again at some point and just kind of getting lost in that world again. But yeah, 9 out of 10 is a solid number for this show. And it's not completely perfect, but it's pretty close to one for as far as like this brutal, violent anime take that they have for this. And kudos to everybody that worked on that show. They did an amazing job with it for sure.
Yeah, Terminator Zero, all episodes are available on Netflix to watch. We can't recommend it enough. It was a great show, and yeah, we really enjoyed being able to check it out, and we hope that you've seen it. If you've watched it, come to our Discord, come to our comments. Let us know what you thought about it, because, you know, we really would love to talk about, especially the deeper stuff when it gets into the AI and the overall story and where they could go with season 2. We'd love to have those discussions with you.
Absolutely.
So moving on, we did have a giveaway running for the month of October. So thank you to everybody who entered into the giveaway to win the Godzilla -1 plus the black and white version 4K box set, along with a t-shirt in your size from our podcast -1 shirt. But the winner is Christopher Page. So congratulations to you. We'll be reaching out to get your information, get your shirt size, and get that out to you. But yeah, thanks again to everybody who's liked the channel and entered into our contest. We really appreciate all the support that everyone's been giving us.
Yeah, just because you missed out on the giveaway, we still have this merch available for sale. You can get your own podcast -1 shirt. We got several other shirts, hats, various merchandise on sale in the shop now. Go to willbringthepopcorn.com/merch. You can find all that there. We appreciate everyone's support, and who knows, here soon, maybe for the holiday season or sometime at the beginning of next year, we will be doing another giveaway. We love doing these types of things, kind of help drive participation in the show as well. And thank you once again to everybody who entered. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, where else can you get a shirt where Godzilla is eating popcorn? I mean, come on.
Anywhere else. Yeah, get it right here.
So coming up this week is an interesting mix of a lot of different things. So in theaters, we have Here, which is Robert Zemeckis and Tom Hanks and Robin Wright all back together again. This is one that we talked about several episodes ago, that it has a camera set up in one location, and it tells its entire story from the beginning of time to wherever it ends off, from one single camera location, one single take. So from that premise alone, we're really looking forward to checking that out. But we also have A Real Pain. So this looks like a very good dramatic with Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin are in this show, or this movie together. It looks like it could be a really interesting independent film.
Absolutely. Definitely looking forward to checking both of those out. Here I'm excited for, because I believe this is the first time Robin Wright and Tom Hanks have worked together since Forrest Gump. I could be wrong, but yeah, it's a big, and you know, teaming up with Robert Zemeckis, obviously that's a you know, potential for a magical story. It looks like it's going to be an emotional gut punch from what the premise of the movie looks like, but visually I'm excited to kind of take in the entire cinematography of a single focus pointed camera and just kind of telling the entire world and kind of sucking us into that story for, you know, everything that they're going to tell in that. I'm excited to check that one out, and it's a little spoiler. We're going to talk about that one next week for sure.
Yep. So on demand, you can go back in our archives to see our review of it, but Joker Folie à Deux is hitting digital and on-demand purchase, along with Piece by Piece, which is the biography of Pharrell that he did in Lego form, which I haven't been able to check that out, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how that was done. But October 29th is when you can pick up both of those. But we also have the Demi Moore horror film The Substance out on October 31st, and then, you know, Sebastian Stan has been the Winter Soldier, he's been Tommy Lee, and now he's Trump. So you've got The Apprentice coming out on November 1st, alongside of the Superman, the Christopher Reeve story documentary, which I'm really looking forward to checking out.
Absolutely.
We were busy and weren't able to get to theaters to see the limited run that it had, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what they did with that. And then one that I feel like I thought it already came out, because I remember seeing the trailers for this last year, was Whitebird. That looks like a very good dramatic story, but it's finally hitting on November 1st as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed bag, like you said. There's a lot of different types of stories coming out. I'm excited about the Christopher Reeve documentary as well. That's gonna be one that's gonna be on my list to check out this week for sure.
And on the TV side, if you grew up with it, Wizards of Waverly Place is back. The sequel continuation series hits Disney Plus on October 28th. So we've had a lot of those, especially with Disney and a few other networks. They've been bringing back kind of their old shows with the actors grown up and seeing exactly where the characters have left off. So if I never watched it, it wasn't something I was into as a kid because I didn't have Disney until the Disney Channel until later when we got satellite TV and stuff back in our day. So I didn't get to watch a lot of those shows, but I'm happy for those that love that show that's getting continuation.
Yeah, a lot of people are kind of, I've seen kind of talk about this being a little bit of a mixed bag because, one of the biggest stars that come out of the show was obviously Selena Gomez, and she's, this huge movie star, pop singer, everything like that, had a wildly successful career, not as involved in the show. I believe she's, spoiler alert, it's already well known out there, she's making at least a cameo in the first episode or at some point in this season, like she's making a cameo appearance. So if you want to check that out, definitely check that out on Disney Plus. But that's definitely one that's got, some mixed reviews on, but I know a lot of people are really excited to see where they take that story because it was one of the more popular Disney Channel shows in that time period for sure. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Once again, we can't thank you enough for your continued support. Go to willbringthepopcorn.com for all of our information. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a like, leave a comment on any of our social media posts. We really enjoy interacting with everybody that watches the show. Coming up next week, we are going to be reviewing the Robert Zemeckis film Here, starring Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. Very much excited to look at that film and bring our thoughts to it on the podcast as well. And we're also going to be reviewing season 1 of Disney's Agatha All Along, which is the Agatha series, starring Catherine Hahn, who was Agatha the Witch from the WandaVision series. That's wrapping up its season finale this week, and we will be talking about that entire season. Excited to dive into that one as well. But until next time, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week.